Welcome to Jackie Just Chatters. I'm your hostess, Jackie Lentz. Happy New Year! I'm hoping I will be friends with 2023. Fingers crossed. Don't forget to subscribe or follow this podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast medium. I'm on Apple and Spotify. Season 2 will be starting next month, and you don't want to miss it. And I have a surprise planned for this month as well. That's all I'm saying at this point. But an announcement will be coming out about the surprise, I think next week, so be on the lookout for that. In this flashback episode, I share the story of my attempt to make some banana bread. It is a pretty funny winter tale of a kitchen exploit gone wrong. What is funnier is listening to me thinking too fast for my mouth. My brain is on to the next thought before I've gotten out the full correct sentence before it. Instead of baking powder, it's baking power. But if you know where I can get some baking power, please let me know. It sounds like something that might help me with my next kitchen adventure. Another mix-up had me on the kitchen counter instead of at the kitchen counter. That would be pretty amusing, though. I need to be taken in hand and told, dude, relax, slow down, take your time. Part of me cringes at every mistake, but the more relaxed side of me is reminding, hey, we all make mistakes. In fact, that was the whole point of this episode. We all screw up. The best thing to do about it is laugh. Go ahead, have a good laugh with me as you listen to this story. All right, consider this episode a confession of sorts. I'm sharing a life story with you. I am a bit of a chaos artist. Now, if you've listened to episode 3, you may think I'm talking about my writing style. Au contraire, mon frère. I am talking about my kitchen style. I let myself just kind of go with the wind in the kitchen, which is probably why I am not the best chef in the world. My story actually really kind of starts with my heat going out. Thankfully, we still had electricity, but the heater was giving me a pouty stare and was not interested in doing any work. Actually, that kind of reminds me of some of my former students when I start thinking about it and put it in those terms. Anyway, so this, of course, happened when temperatures were going down to about like 15 degrees, and the day was going to have like maybe a high of 25. So I got a fire going in the hearth, thank you, Huga. Cranked up what space heaters we had in the house. I even used some of my beloved candles. And, of course, because I'm a Midwestern gal, I know how to layer up. It wasn't terrible, but it was, still a little chilly because, it's like 16 degrees outside and the wind was howling, folks. So I'm complaining to my sister because, that's what you do with your sister. And she encouraged me to bake, go on a baking spree so that the oven would help in the heating mix. And this actually was a very sound suggestion, so thank you, Nick. And I had a recipe that a friend had sent to me that she had stayed at a B&B on the Cape in Massachusetts. And oh my God, doesn't that just sound romantic to say, oh, I was on a B&B in the Cape. And she told me she had the best banana bread of her life, and she left with the recipe. And it required like this fancy cane sugar, and I'd never even heard of this thing. And it was like this crunchy crust thing you would put on the top. Anyway, so like I did eventually procure some of this stuff like after I was like, what the heck is this? But she said it was good. So, but I sat on this recipe for like months, and I needed something that was going to cook for a while. My sister's like, oh yeah, banana bread, like you've got like an hour. Perfect. So I thought, okay, it's time to bust out the banana bread recipe. And I even had on my little fruit hanging stand was like 2 bananas that were like that still yellow, but kind of brown, like that perfect kind of like, oh, you are ready for banana bread. Let me paint a picture for you. Thanks to my recent ankle surgery, my back is totally jacked up. Because of the lack of heat, I had been hauling in armfuls of wood for my fireplace, and I can't walk evenly, and this messes up my hips and my back. So by the time I get to level bread, my back was a red hot, angry mess, and I hurt a lot, but I'm going to bake anyway. The idea of like standing on the counter and doing all this, oh my gosh, it really hurt. So I'm going to do this ingenious thing that I had to do before. I roll over my computer chair so I can sit at my counter while I do the measure and do baking stuff. And I can sit and take some of the pressure off my back. So I'm not standing the whole time. So I've got this computer chair in my kitchen. And like my chin is like just above counter level. So yeah, you can imagine that. And I get out the recipe, and I need oil, vanilla, baking soda and power, and of course that fancy sugar. So I roll on my chair over to my baking cupboard. If you don't have a baking cupboard, well, I'm sorry, you're basically a barbarian, okay? We got to have some standards of civility. So I get my stuff, and then I roll me and my ingredients over to the counter where my KitchenAid mixer is, which is the foundation of every kitchen. You're just not going to get me to budge on that point. I feel very strongly about that. Then I roll from there over to the fridge, and I get the cream cheese because this is fancy filled banana bread. Oh, yes. And then I check the eggs. And I'm doing a little prayer. Thankfully, I have eggs that are still good because there was some eggs that weren't. So we had a little scare there for a minute because the first, like, oh no, these dates are not, oh, there's a box underneath and those are good. Excellent. Yay. Got the sour cream. Check. Okay. Now I'm rolling back and I look at the recipe. I am to start with the egg. So I crack it into the KitchenAid mixer, and then I look at the next item, and I'm to add brown sugar. I have brown sugar. I always have brown sugar, right? We all did, right? And it's in my Tupperware container at the top of the baking cupboard. I'm going to have to leave the chair. So I roll over. I stand up. I reach to the top of the cupboard. I get the box. This is hurting. I roll back. I open it up. There's some sugar. But oh my gosh, this stuff was so hard I could use it as a wet. And it was like, not just hard, it was like old, nasty, sad, bitter brown sugar. I'm like, that's just going to be some bitter, sad bread if I put that in there. Now I'm on the phone as I'm looking at my sugar situation, and my friend instructs me that I can make a substitute. I can make brown sugar. I didn't know you could do this. You can, apparently. You have to take molasses and mix it with regular sugar. Now she starts to sass me. She's like, well, you could use molasses with regular sugar, but you'd have to have molasses. She is well aware that I am not, the lead baker or chef. I'm like, oh, no, my friend. I have molasses. So you will just eat those words. So I go get the jar of molasses, and I'm like, I have shown my superiority over her. And this is where hubris is going to come and get me and bite me in the tookie. So I roll over to my sugar jar, and I open it, and I'm going to get my white sugar that I need to now make the brown sugar, and the recipe calls for white sugar, and there is like some dregs at the bottom and nothing else. I'm out of white sugar. How did this happen? I collected all the ingredients before I started the recipe, except the sugar and the flour, because why would I grab those right off? I always have those. I had to make sure I had that crazy I can't pronounce the stupid sugar, but I had the fancy sugar. I had the not quite rotten bananas. I even had molasses, for heaven's sakes. But no regular white sugar. Come on, universe. Stop messing with this poor girl. And then I look into my KitchenAid mixer bowl. There at the bottom is the single egg that I had started with. And it's waiting for the rest of the mix, and it's looking at me, staring and wanting to know what its purpose is being in the bowl if there's no sugar coming. And I realized it was having an existential crisis. I made a pun. Okay, Kevin makes puns all the time, and that's fine. I don't make puns. I had clearly cracked up. And that's when I knew it was time to call it. This banana bread thing was not happening. It had pushed me into pun territory. And that was it. It was done. I put everything back where it belonged. I flushed that egg down the drain. And that was that. I'm sorry. Were you looking for some clean resolution with the story? No, that isn't this kind of podcast. I am a chaos chef. I don't know what is going to happen when I step into the kitchen. But here's a little tip for you ladies and gentlemen. Check that you have all the ingredients before you start making your recipe. Your story will probably end up with some food. Do you have any stories of kitchen mishaps? Don't let me think I'm out here all alone, folks. Share them on my Jackie Lynn's Author Facebook page. Dear listener, thank you for chatting with me. My regular episodes come out every other Thursday. I wish you well.